The South Devon Estuaries Partnership, which some of you may also be familiar with, nests within that partnership approach that we take and is supported by the staff unit. The statutory management plan is at the heart of the work. As required by law, that's revisited once every 5 years as an absolute outside time frame. And that really sets the tone for the priorities for the area and the work programme of the unit. It speaks as a voice really for protected landscape itself and captures the actions of all the partners involved, including those where the A&B unit itself delivers on behalf of the partnership, but also many of your actions as a council and all the partners too. The current plan period is 2019 through to 2024, so we're firmly in the middle of that process, and I think the expectation is next time around with management plan review, we're likely to see some substantial changes on the back of the Global Landscapes Review that reported back in 2019. Funding-wise, the lion's share of the core funding is provided by DEFRA, conditional upon contributions from local authorities. So 75% funding from DEFRA, and then the two principal local authority contributors, yourselves and Devon County Council, each provide a contribution. At present, that's with the District Council's contribution around 11.5% also of the core operating costs. But in terms of this year's current turnover and the action that we're undertaking is more like about 3%, 3.5% of the total operating budget of the unit. So management plan priorities and indeed the priorities of DEFRA, I think in particular accords incredibly well with the emerging corporate strategy, so Better Lives for All, that you're working on at the moment. And there'll be no surprise that they're focused around climate, nature, people and place. So the work we undertake in support of management plan priorities really underpins in particular the focus around climate and biodiversity, community wellbeing and the built and natural environment. There's a range of recent successes from the last 12-month period plus or so, including 6 years of countryside stewardship farm facilitation work in the Avon Valley, which has led to over £2.5 million of investment in farm businesses to safeguard the natural environment. Although the Avon Valley core part falls within the A&B, the facilitation group area extends way beyond that, and that's typical of the way that we work, that it's not all about land only within the A&B or people within the A&B, but working much more broadly. Environmental land management advocacy work on catchment space approach with a whole range of different organisations and scales of community action. Work on the Colchester Declaration, which was a commitment to nature recovery, habitats and focused species and increasing nature connectedness. Our Young Carers 60 at 60 programme and Coastal Heritage Project focused on recording and restoring into better condition scheduled nature monuments to then take them off the Heritage at Risk register. The project list is long. We lead on many projects, but we're also partners and advisors on many more too. And I hope you feel that just that little flavour that I've given you accords really well with the scope of priorities that you have as a council. Priorities, challenges and pressures, I think, for the next 12 months or so, ensuring that action to implement the Glover Review proposals, a landscape review, actually deliver for areas of outstanding natural beauty and our partners in national parks and the national trails is really important. It was an excellent piece of work with some great findings, but is sadly held up at present. We've heard a written ministerial statement, and there's more to come later this year in terms of DEFRA formal response and consultation, which will be reaching out in particular to local authorities who heard much about what a National Landscape Service might or might not mean, and this will be a chance to really input to that. Also part of that is Natural England leading on a green paper and consultation later this year on multifunctional designations for the future. So not just landscape, not just nature, but a combination of the two and more. And I know that you supported a motion recently to investigate what an enlarged A and B area, or indeed alternative forms of designation, might look like. That will all feed into that particular process. Nature recovery is a core area of activity for us, and a Life on the Edge project, flagship for South Devon, £4.5 million worth of investment over the next 6 years, if we keep our fingers firmly crossed with the National Lottery Heritage Fund bid, which is due in August of this year and has already had a lot of support from a whole variety of different sectors. That's focused on coastal habitats and species, but the communities at our coast and more broadly action for biodiversity and nature conservation. Agricultural transition is clearly a key area of pressure and activity. Very many worried businesses out there as to what comes next in this move across to environmental land management. In particular, the introduction from DEFRA late in the year, so 1st of July start dates of a Farming and Protected Landscapes programme, which for this A&B is worth around £800,000, lion's share of which to distribute to farm businesses and landowners across the area. Clearly, we can't mention the A&B without touching on development pressures, but also opportunities that come with development. So ensuring the right form of development in the right place and supporting you as a council in making the best possible decisions on development management applications. Climate action and working with natural processes through nature-based solutions is absolutely central to everything that we've been doing from the emergence of the partnership in 2003, but it's obviously much more front and centre stage now. So I hope you'll take pride in leaning on us to help deliver and support the Council's work on climate action. You'll see a lot of our work is based around behaviour. Is that better for everyone? We'll see. Okay.
That's the online audience you say well.
Thank you, Chair. So the whole issue around behavioural change is something that's incredibly important and at the core of how we respond collectively as a society. And you'll see much in our project programmes and our core work, which is focused around implementing a series of initiatives which increase nature connectedness and understanding of the natural environment. And research has shown that those that increase their nature connectedness go on to demonstrate pro-environmental behaviours. And so that's the kind of model and the ethos and that is at the heart of our engagement programmes. New forms of investment and funding are absolutely essential, recognising the pressure on the public purse, and we've grown as a partnership and a staff unit over recent years, bringing in alternative sources of funding to support the shortfall in funding that we have. The one regret I have coming today is to announce that sadly the Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund bid that we led on in partnership with the Council and also Ambios Limited from Sharpham. Although the project was very well received, it failed at the final hurdle. We've received some fantastic feedback and we're hoping to reshape that and resubmit. That was focused around the River Dart area and the riparian landowners and biodiversity enhancements, looking at green bonds and other forms of private sector investments around nature and carbon in that area. So, a broad range of projects and opportunities, challenges and pressures for the next 12 months or so. I've only given you a snapshot. Without the opportunity to provide a presentation as such, I thought the best option really was to talk to you a little bit about the range of activities we've been involved in, are involved in, nature of the partnership, and then on the strength of the questions that you might have for me, is to very quickly go away afterwards and draft that up as a briefing note for you. So you do have some factual information to be able to rely on and go away from.
Thank you, Mr. English.
A matter that has been discussed previously with the Council is the possibility of extending the boundary of the South Devon area and the problems associated with that. I wonder if you could briefly explain the positions that you see and the possibilities of extending the boundary.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that up until very recently, so the written ministerial statement in June, that the chances of extending the boundary in South Devon were at best very limited. However, the nature of the Glover Review, Landscapes Review, was that they demonstrated that there was in excess of 50 years worth of caseload for either new or extended boundaries to areas of outstanding natural beauty and national parks. So there's a weight of evidence there, plus a need on the back of the government's desire to have 30% of the area designated by in better condition by 2030 to actually increase the amount of designated land that is out there. So I mentioned, Chair, earlier that the announcement in the written ministerial statement and also follow-up letter that I received to pass on to the South Hams Society mentioned that Natural England will be undertaking a comprehensive green paper and land availability study later this year, including consultations. So I think if the Council is keen on exploring that as an approach, either an expansion of the A and B boundary or the national park boundary or some alternative forms of designation which would complement. You might recall we used to have areas of great landscape value at some point in the past. And so what Natural England are doing is looking at creative solutions to the future of designations. That might mean extensions in some places. It might mean completely new styles of designation. An example that's frequently quoted is Plymouth Sound National Marine Park. Although there are obviously exceptional challenges associated with that for ourselves and the Council. So I think there's, Chair, in summary, there's an opportunity coming. The South Hams Society championed an expansion of the A and B boundary around 2013, 2014, and so that has been firmly on the list of possibilities for Natural England. There are a number of questions and issues obviously in there. I think we can always do more with more, and we've made that point really clearly, not only as a partnership and a staff unit, but nationally. And so within the Glover Review proposals, you will have seen that Glover and his panel found that particularly in the case of A&Bs that it's not only the resources but also the powers and purposes that are almost woefully inadequate. However, in terms of the funding that is currently made available, DEFRA's contribution plus those of the local authorities is an incredibly important set of contributions which enables us to draw in those other charitable private sector and other sources of income. Without that call, we would not be able to action that activity. So I think in terms of leanness, we've worked really hard in parallel with the transformation programme
know Dartmoor is involved in setting up a panel to deal with these applications. How far have you got with that one? Finally, sorry to be labouring this, you won't be surprised that I've been asked to whether you could come up with an answer to this adaptation post, adaptation officer post, which I think you're going due to provide. I think there are one or two members who are quite keen to see that happen. Sorry, there's quite a lot.
There's quite a long list there, Chair.
Yeah,
I'll do my best to respond quickly.
Yeah.
Could you keep the answers succinct and brief?
Sure. So, for brevity, I didn't cover the entire range of funders, but to reassure you in terms of contributions to core budget from local authorities, both Plymouth and Torbay do contribute. There's obviously a small area, but as Councillor Smith pointed out, a very large population that benefits from, and I think there's always room for developing relationships more, and collectively, ourselves, Kevin up at the park and his team, plus Tamar Valley, are exploring those with Plymouth in particular. In terms of staff numbers, the breakdown is that we have an A&B project officer who's full-time, although currently working 4 days a week, and what that allows me to do is to explore a collaborative working arrangement with the National Park Authority to assist us with planning support in the short term, just as a year's trial. We have community projects officer and time project officer. In place, so we currently pay for that office space and a range of services. I think we are the only A&B in the country out of the 34 English A&Bs that has a service level agreement in place. All the other A&Bs, the budget line, if you like, the contribution from the host local authority is seen as a core part of delivery rather than something that must be competed for on an annual or a 3-year basis. In terms of Farming and Protected Landscapes programme, for all designated landscapes, this was to some degree very delayed, but also sprung on us, the detail of it at the very last minute. But we've got a very innovative and dedicated team who have sprung into action. And in the run-up to that, we've been working incredibly closely with Kevin Bishop's team at Dartmoor National Park, also our other Devon A&B colleagues, but particularly Tamar Valley, to look at shared areas of expertise, training, support, and so on. So that has led us to where we are today. We've got an interim arrangement in place with contractors from Quack South West and a number of others that provide direct Farming and Protected Landscape Officer style support to applicants. The application window went live on the 1st of July, and we're actively supporting that through staff team and contractors. And in terms of the panel, we're fully formed and just gearing up for what is likely to be a first meeting in probably late September, early October. But we're working again closely with Chris Giles' team on sharing support and training with Dartmoor National Park Authority for panel members. I think, Nancy, you asked about the adaptation post, and quite rightly so. It's a particular embarrassment of mine that where we are and it's taken so long. This last 16 months or so has been exceptional, but there's no excuse for not actually moving that forward. And as I speak, we're the lion's share of the way through, just putting the finishing touches to the job description person spec, and I anticipate with HR colleagues' support that we'll be out to advert next week.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you for the
Yes.
I mean, I'm the first to celebrate the sun, but this heat is pretty something that can be completely eradicated through farming and housing. So I guess I'm interested to hear from you, and maybe this could be answered very briefly here, maybe come more into the report as to how you might propose that we could work alongside you in furthering of our intentions to follow through on our climate diversity work and so I'd love to hear from you, maybe kind of now in your thought, any kind of ideas you have for collaborative work in the scheme outside of
Absolutely. So in terms of that action, I think the principal way that we can make a difference is through large project programs, but also stimulating behavioural change in the manner that I talked about. In terms of woodland cover and our area, or tree cover within the A1B itself, we're at a lowly 8%, and that is inadequate and needs to be higher. There are plenty of opportunities, and we're already exploring some of those and delivering through the Trees Outside Woodlands programme, which we're a partner and contributor. But there's a lot of local level activity and work that can and is taking place, much of which we're involved in at a community level. So those aspirations and the strategy setting and the opportunities and the targeting, we're a key partner with you, but we're also able to convene, and I think our strength lies in that power to convene, being the honest broker without a particular agenda to push, and are able to work at all sorts of scales and geographies as a consequence. So within the paper, I'm very happily to include a few more illustrative examples of the type of work we have and have got planned, if that helps.
Thank you. Actually, one other thing Are you connected in any way with any people restoration work?
We are.
That's not your area. But
We are in a very sort of peripheral way. So the Colchester Declaration I made reference to, there's a Northern Upland chain group of A1Bs and national parks that are working tightly together. We obviously talk with our colleagues at Dartmoor National Park and South West Water, Wildlife Trust, etc., and the projects, and work happening in the headwaters of the South Devon catchments greatly benefits water quality, natural flood protection measures, etc., for downstream. All of those things. Our challenge is what to do in the flashy parts of the shorter catchments, and that's really where we can make more of a difference alongside yourselves and other partners like West Country, River Straws, and the new farming programmes that are part of environmental land management as they come forward.
thanks very much.
Sorry, do you mind?
But if not helpful, if I come to you, Councillor.
Yes.
Is there any other member? Councillor Jackson.
Are you involved with Primrose Trails?
Not involved with the Primrose Trail, although they have approached us to ask for a view and advice. At present, the feasibility study or outline proposal is woefully lacking any real detail around the impacts or potential impacts upon natural beauty and in particular upon protected species and some of the key habitats. On the other side of the equation are the health and well-being potential benefits, and so really there's more work for the group to do to go away and kind of rethink and develop their evidence base.
Any questions from any other member? Councillor Coe.
That's right.
I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Coe. Councillor Coe.
there's quite a lot of agencies involved in the land management and other benefits of this scheme. So, you've got naturally the UNESCO biosphere, you've got environment and energy scheme, and definitely with this yourself. I know this from my own experience in the past, it can be very confusing for people when sort of speaking with agencies to, for instance, reporting pollution, environmental security, the open housing was there. Is this something that's going to be addressed by the development commission? As I understand, we don't really have any statute as to or a constitute, but beyond that, we have to ensure that environmental base and
Is that sort of landscape going to be what you kind of a little less confusing? Are there any actions to improve it?
There are definitely ambitions to improve it. In terms of, so I think there's a couple of elements there. One is around land management, and one is around the development management or planning system. So I'll tackle the first. Around land management, and in particular the proliferation of different bodies, projects, etc., that knock on farm doors or email or phone. Since the very first management plan was developed for the AUMB, the farming community has very clearly articulated to us as a body that they would like to see us stepping forward and providing a degree of coordination. We've been doing that in various guises over the years, and the latest is the South Devon Land Management Advisors Forum, which also includes a variety of large estates as well on that discussion group. And that currently meets a couple of times a year and coordinates activity and shares intelligence and information. And that at a very simple level is one of the ways that we're working jointly together. In terms of the role of national landscapes in the future, Glover was very clear that they would, as a panel, they wish to see national landscapes working much more centrally as a key delivery vehicle for future environmental land management scheme. And in a way, the Farming and Protected Landscape Programme is a sort of start in that direction, and an ability for us to work closely with the agencies and show what can be achieved. We're clearly not looking for overlap and duplication of effort. We're always looking for added value. And in terms of development management, one of the key proposals in Glover was that AUMB partnerships become statutory consultees in the planning system, but are also properly resourced in order to support that work. That's why there's such a focus and an attention at present on seeing the Glover Review proposals actually turned into direct action. We're aware that work's happening behind the scenes. There's a team of over 40 people within DEFRA that are working directly on the implementation of Glover proposals, but we haven't seen the detail yet, and that's due to come shortly.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm just wondering, Mr. English, about your place within the planning system here at South Hams. And, for example, I mean, how often, I'm not on the planning committee, so I perhaps know a bit less than those who are, but how often would you say, you may not know off the top of your head, but how often are planning applications referred to you, let's say within the last 12 months, by planning officers here at South Hams, and how often would you say you object to those applications that do come your way?
So in relation to applications that are referred to us, those referrals are largely in accordance with the planning protocol that we have in place. So that there are something in the region of 1,300 to 1,400 applications within the South Hams District Council LPA area that in theory have an impact on the special qualities, natural beauty of the AUMB. The planning guidance document that we developed is the starting point for case officers and for that matter Development Management Committee to refer to as effectively standing advice. So the protocol sets a threshold above which consultation should be coming through. They're broadly at or around that threshold or higher, but there are some, I think there's some that come through in the year which fall below that threshold, but if possible we provide verbal advice. At present, that's running at around 150, I think it's 152 for the last 12-month period. But our development management colleagues are reporting a 25% increase in caseload right now. You'll be aware that just the sheer level and complexity of applications coming through is so much greater than ever before. So that gives you a sort of idea of the kind of numbers we're talking about. You must remember also that we provide similar service to Torbay Council and to the Marine Management Organisation, albeit the area in the AUMB is very small in Plymouth. We've had a couple recently, one of which did go to appeal, and our case supporting the Plymouth City Council was successful and that appeal was quashed. But equally, we're involved with 400 plus house schemes out in the setting of the A&B near Waterton. Arguably, the impacts of that scheme are much more impactful on South Hams than on Torbay itself. Sadly, in that case, Torbay's lack of 5-year housing supply meant that although the landscape arguments were won, the case involved was not. And so that's been, permission's been consented by the inspector in that instance. In terms of the number of applications we object to, I think the issue to remember is that we're asked for advice because they're contentious or they're difficult applications. So as a consequence, I think it's fair to say that the lion's share of those applications are usually, because there are A and B grounds that are contentious, that they are objections. But there are occasions where a neutral view is offered. We don't go as far as supporting an application, that's not our role. But where there's a balance with the application and the policy set, which we're also involved in helping write, particularly the DEF25 Nationally Protected Landscapes policy, we'll make our decision and advice in accordance with that policy set and the A&B management plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. English. If members do have any further questions, can I suggest that once Mr. English has circulated we're going to do a supplement to the report we've given to the committee.
I'll pick up briefly on the items that you questioned me about, if that's okay, Chair.
If that could be circulated to all members of the committee, and then if any member has any further questions, then they can either raise them with you through an email or make an appointment to see you. So unless any member has a really urgent question, can I suggest it be dealt with the way that I've mentioned? So I'd like to thank you, Mr. English, for coming along, and we look forward to receiving your further report and dealing with any questions or queries arising. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Chair, members, we believe that one of the issues that we're having with the sound is the basically links to the frequencies of mobile phones and the microphones being similar. So I would ask if it's possible, if members have got mobile phones, that they have them switched off for the duration of the meeting. It's apparently alter airplane mode. There you go, airplane mode. Thank you, Janice.
Okay. Right, the next item on the agenda is the Task and Finish Group update. The position is that the members of the Task and Finish Group have been determined following nominations from the leader of both groups. Just to remind members that there is provision within the new constitution for substitution. So if any member who is on the Task and Finish Group is unable to attend, then arrangements can be made for substitution. But there is a procedure to follow, so it can't be left to the last moment. I understand that arrangements are being made for a calendar of meetings to be issued shortly. There's a nod, yes. So you should all receive from Democratic Services dates of the meetings of the Task and Finish Group. And the first meeting of the group, the first item on the agenda will be dealing with the terms of reference. So unless any members got any questions, Councillor Mackay.
As to the list of dates for meetings, I think that should be down to the Task and Finish Group. I think it was to set up the date of the first meeting, and then from that meeting we would work with work schedule and the meetings we would.
I think that's what's happening. Yeah.
Okay.
It's determining the date of the first meeting. So, you've just appeared.
I've just appeared, Chairman, yeah. Thank you, and afternoon, everyone. So we've been in touch with Councillor Councillor Thomas as the chair, and the proposal is for the first meeting to be on the 19th of August. Thursday the 19th of August in the morning at 10 o'clock. And then, as agreed, for the other meetings to be...
And that's a remote meeting?
It'll be a remote Teams meeting, 10 o'clock on 19th of August.
And it's by team? Yes.
By Teams, yes.
Councillor Ross.
Well,
I think this is an emergency, and I think we've got to get underway. I can't see there's a problem having a meeting in August.
Is there ever been a run time when you have a meeting?
public meetings have been held. This was a proposal put forward with the chair this morning. Really, if members feel it's not appropriate, then...
There's very good reason not to.
No. Right. It's being proposed at the meeting on the 19th of August. That has been proposed by the chair of the Task and Finish Group. All those in favour of that? Those against? Good. Okay, that's carried. The first meeting will be on the 19th of August at 10 o'clock. Are there any other matters arising out of the Task and Finish Group? No. In that case, we'll move to the panel work programme. I've referred to the attachment that went with the, sent out with the agenda. There is a proposal to move one of the items on the 30th of September, that is the Council Delivery Against Corporate Theme 1, that is to be moved back until the meeting of the 4th of November 2021. Can we have an explanation as to why that's happening, Mr. Molyneux? Or proposed?
The reason that that's proposed, Chair, is that Council won't have agreed the new corporate strategy until the September meeting. So therefore it seems little point in a week later having a meeting as to what progress is on whichever area of the strategy we determine. And I think that's the other thing that we need to look at in terms of which are the areas we bring forward. But we just put placeholders in there. So the suggestion is that by moving it to the November meeting, which is enough time to the lead member to pull together a story and a plan of action. And I'll have the delivery plans as well.
So do we all agree? Are we happy to have that moved back by one meeting? Yes. In its place then, it's proposed that there's been a proposal that we deal with an item, that a report coming forward on Devon Home Choice. So that could be included within the meeting, including the agenda of the meeting on the 30th of September. And furthermore, if you look at the end of the paper, it's got to be considered for scheduling is a visit or report from Dartmoor National Park Authority, the Chief Executive, being proposed that he comes along to our meeting on the 1st of September. I understand that he is available. So if we could add those two items, if you're happy with that, that's Devon Home Choice and the Dartmoor National Park Authority report from the Chief Executive. So happy to include that? Yes? Yes. Okay, the other two items to be considered for scheduling is Devon Health and Wellbeing Board and Broadband and Connecting Devon and Somerset. I propose that we can, that at our next meeting, the dates for those two be considered at the meeting on the 3rd of September. We all happy with that? Yes? Yeah. Good. Any other questions on the work programme? No. Okay. So next is the update on the performance of FCC. You have a report before you that was, it was sent out a couple of days ago, maybe a bit longer. Can I just make it clear as to how we're going to deal with this item? The open session will deal with the issues concerning the performance to date, and therefore the report will deal with the performance to date, and then there will be questions and comments arising out of that. as to what happens next or what's going to happen in the future, depending on whether that will then be hopefully dealt with in a part 2, depending quite obviously on the committee agreeing to it proceeding on that basis. So perhaps first of all we could deal with the performance to date, and any questions or comments just relate to that rather than what is going to be happening in the future. So shall I ask with Councillor Baldry to start off, or Mr. Molyneux?
Councillor Baldry, would you mind moving close to the microphones, or we can move the microphone closer to you?
I have to tell you, it sounds impossible. If anyone's trying to listen on YouTube, they'll be hearing all of it. Councillor Baldry, can I just ask you, you just told to turn all your phones off, because apparently that was going to fix the problem. You say it made no difference whatsoever. And I'm trying to make it on YouTube, but it doesn't work on YouTube. The lighting has got nothing to do with our phones. I'm asking technical questions now.
Councillor Baldry, would you like to come forward?
I am coming forward, I'm moving slowly. You know I am doing that. The other thing, Chairman, I can say on the problem with the sound is there are at least 2, maybe 3 members sitting next door who come in specially to listen to this meeting. And they might as well stay at home. Can we arrange them to sit in?
No,
Can we open the door?
Councillor Long has gone home. Didn't see any point in saying.
Yes. Is there any member next door?
Yeah, Councillor Abbott's next door. And Councillor Holway as well. Councillor Holway.
Chair, if I may, we were aware of the microphone issue from the executive meeting, where the sound, that was also impossible to hear. We've been looking, the reason we were delayed is because Commons felt they found a new solution that would work without using the microphone. The issue is the microphones, and they are not a cheap solution that you can just replace it. It's quite expensive, so we're looking at finding the right solution that will be work going forward rather than a temporary fix. So we're hoping that over the summer, before the next set of formal meetings in September, we can have a more suitable solution for all the committee meetings that are held in these weeks. So that's the issue for members.
Can we clarify so nothing to do with our
They believe that it is, because they believe that it has an impact because it's on the same frequencies or similar frequencies. In previous meetings, we've had to ask people to turn their phones off too.
But we still can't hear.
No, we haven't resolved it.
Can we proceed with the Councillor Baldry, please?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, members, any members of the public struggling to listen. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to say very, very few words of introduction. Starting with the recommendations at the top of the paper. It is very difficult in a paper of this nature. It is not my job or Mr. Molyneux's job, I don't think, to suggest recommendations. That's up to this panel. I'm not a member of this panel, but we've put some words in there, and I would encourage you to come up with whatever you want to say in the way of a recommendation at the end of it. You will be aware that at the moment FCC, along with a lot of the nation, are suffering from people isolating at home, and as a result of that we have had to suspend some services. The purpose of this paper is, I think, and if you agree, Chairman, to consider things as they were when we wrote the paper and not as they have arisen this week, because there is, I think, very good reasons why services have been suspended because of people isolating at home. I want mainly to concentrate on listening to what panel members have to say. I am disappointed at what you said, Chairman, at the beginning, that we may have to go into part 2, because I think that members of the public have as much right as members of this council to hear the explanations and the answers to questions. And it will be unfortunate, I think, if we go into part 2. I'd much rather we stayed in open session so that the public can hear what the answers are to the questions. And also, Chairman, if I can say, and I am going to criticise you, You supplied us with 10 questions before this meeting, which is often a very welcome thing to happen. But in this instance, it is not so welcome because you, sir, have had opportunities for private discussions and briefings, and I'd much rather at this meeting hear what panel members are concerned about, rather than, but we will go through your questions if you want us to. But if every member of this panel has 10 questions to ask, you've better order breakfast now. Chairman, the paper demonstrates that things have got a lot better, significantly better than they were before, but they are still far short of what we have a right to expect from the contractor. If you read towards the end of the paper, paragraph 3.3, because things are a lot better, we are able now to start concentrating in our discussions with FCC on things outside the just pure question of refuse and recycling collections. We are now aware that other services they provide are not performing properly, and that includes bottle and paper bank emptying, litter and dog bin emptying, and toilet cleaning and road sweeping. And as we go into the tourist season, the prestige of this council demands that those services are properly provided, and I'm pleased that we're now able to say that the waste team are able to be looking at those with the assistance of localities. Sarah Moody is with us, who also has a responsibility as well as doing two jobs, one working on the waste and recycling service and the other one on things like localities. I'm sure she'll be able to answer any questions on that. Mr. Molyneux, you may want to add anything. Enough from me, I'd like to go into questions.
Mr. Molyneux, you want to add to Councillor Baldry said?
I think we'll go to questions. I think that was a good summary from Councillor Baldry, if that's okay, Chair.
Right, I'll open it for questions. Members, have we got questions? Councillor Snowden.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry, for that breakdown. I'll start by paying thanks to everybody from Southampton who's been involved in this. Yourself as executive member, Mr. Molyneux, and the members of the waste team carried a considerable burden over the last few weeks and months, and probably still do, so I appreciate that on behalf of the members. The impression which I've got is that FCC threw every available resource into clearing up the backlog, anything that had got wheels, and they could put a guy in, put on the road, they did, and they, and to be fair, the amount of bins and collections and everything like that has gone down significantly. But that's still quite a long way from the service, which they are supposed to be providing us with, and we've still got a lot of people that are still on the old service. The fact that a lot of those people are quite happy that they're still on the old service because they are getting they're getting the collection. But what I'm trying to ask, I guess, is what are they doing towards getting towards that service that we want? I mean, for example, as the big problem was the fact that the in-cab technology didn't seem to work. I mean, I'm gleefully skating over COVID, etc. But I think we need to get down to we all appreciate that that's a problem which to the degree they can't do a lot about. But so yeah, the in-cab technology and getting us back to the recycling service that we want. I guess that's the key question that we all like to ask.
Right. Mr. Molyneux is going to speak in a moment. I'm just going to say thank you for acknowledging that things have got better, and I will confirm they are well short of where we want them to be. You're right to say that FCC had thrown quite a large amount of resource in ways of vehicles and people bringing in from other operational areas, putting up staff in hotels. They've brought vehicles in from other parts of their operation to get it right. Steve.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. I guess going back to your, what in terms of contractual levels and how far away we are from that, if I draw members' attention to sort of section 2.7 within the report, paragraph 2.7, where I basically said that last week the average number of reports of missed bins from customers was around 53 per day. That's an average over a weekly period. Now, to meet the contractual levels, that would be something like 240 per month. So for them to meet their contractual performance, it should be less than around 240 per month. And we're averaging 50 per day. So you can still see that whilst we've made a massive improvement, and FCC are pretty much going out and collecting everybody's recycling, they are still missing a chunk of people. Now, we estimate that that's probably around about 500 or so residents that are probably still not getting a consistent recycling service. So that's the challenge that we're facing, and we still have a way to go to resolve that. In terms of the in-cab technology, I personally don't believe the issue is with the technology. The issue is with the training of the staff using the technology, the interpretation of the data and doing something about it. And that's what Sarah and Mrs. Moody and the team are now focusing on. It's getting into that level of detail. We have access to the same systems that FCC have. We challenge them on a daily basis when they say, we went out and we completed round 4. And we look at that data and say, well, there's 5 properties there that you've not completed. Oh no, we did complete them. Well, we've actually started to send our own staff out to say, no, we've still got no recycling not collected. So we are starting to hone in on those issues that have been difficult to resolve. And just going back to COVID, because I think it really is an important point, and I think it's going to hinder us now from making further progress. Last Friday, FCC had, Friday morning, they had 3 staff self-isolating. By Friday afternoon, that was 7 staff. By Monday morning, it was 10 staff. And as a result of that, they have not been able to do one of the brown bin collection rounds. And they had another member of staff another driver phone in sick this morning. So that meant that there was a second brown bin collection round that they can't do. So what I think we're going to see, and you'll see it's on the BBC News website today, which made the national BBC news feed today, around councils are now struggling with waste collection because of the pandemic, the self-isolating, the COVID scenario. So I think the challenge we've got is whilst we're focusing on the right things in terms of our customers getting collections, FCC really are battling the challenge of a shortage of staff, their inability and the recognised shortfall in drivers, which is the other issue. So they can't just pick people from an agency and get them in because there just aren't staff there that are willing to do that type of work. So it's a combination of issues, and I think it will be difficult to get back to that contracted level in the short term, is my view. However, will we continue to try and ensure that all our residents get a collection? We absolutely will, and we are confident that we can do that. But we will still be faced with issues across the whole service in terms of, and we have basically told FCC that the priority is that they do the street scene, that they do the grey bins. So street scene, I'm talking about litter bin emptying and so on, that they do our residual collections, our recycling collections, and the lowest priority, so the service that gives if they have staff shortages, is our brown bin collection.
Can I just follow that through on the question then? One of the questions I submitted to you was, and I'll just read it out, it has been reported that the non-waste collection services being delivered by FCC are also falling below the required level of performance. Is this the case, and what steps are being taken by FCC to rectify these deficiencies? How are their performances being monitored and reported? I mean, the questions have centred, the discussion is centred on the waste collection, but that is not the only part of FCC's contract. There are other parts to it which also seem to be failing, and they are not mentioned at all in the report to any great extent. I mean, first of all, are we in a situation where that is falling below the required standard? And if that is the case, what is being done about that? And how is that performance being measured?
Well, yeah, the answer is yes, they are falling short, and it was mentioned in the report, paragraph 3.3, that we are, well, it was, but they are, the answer to your question, Mr. Chairman, is that they are falling short. They're not delivering what, and we are doing our best to increase the amount of Southam staff who are taking part in dealing with paper banks, litter bins, dog bins, and checking up on things. And localities are out doing that.
So we're doing the work that FCC should be doing.
Yes.
So what is a result of Southam's staff or operatives doing FCC's job? What is going astray as far as Southam's services? Because presumably these personnel have had to be taken off other Southam's duties,
yes,
to help out FCC. So what else is suffering as a result of FCC not performing?
I mean, we've rehearsed it before. The answer is yes. If we are doing FCC's work and if we are doing the checking up on the waste and recycling services, the staff doing that are not doing what they would otherwise do. And in particular, as a direct effect, the fact that Mr. Cropper and Mrs. Moody are doing management work on behalf of FCC, they are not doing what they would otherwise do, including, and it's particularly close to my heart, the grounds maintenance management is not moving forward the way I would like it to. But the answer to your question is, yes, it is costing. Southam staff are not doing the work they would otherwise be doing.
So can I just follow that on a further question? Is that what the report seems to indicate, and what you've indicated, Councillor Baldry, is we're better than it was. What must not be forgotten is that this council contracted with FCC to provide a complete Devon aligned service, a complete Devon, and that in fact should have started last year, not this year. It has been extended, but putting that to one side, FCC are not delivering a full Devon aligned service, which we as a council are paying them £400,000 a year to, or a sum, a substantial sum for providing that service. Now, point is this, there are, I believe it, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are 8,000 households who are not receiving the Devon Aligned service in any shape or form at the moment. In other words, they're on the old system.
Yes.
There are about 10,000 households who are having what's called the intermingled service. And that is causing embarrassment to this council in that residents are separating the recycling materials into different containers, and it's all being put into one vehicle, taken off for sorting at Plymouth. But in amongst it all, the food waste they're being told to put into the black bin. So that's not being recycled. So the thing is that we are far, far, far away from having what we as a council contracted with FCC. They should have been provided now a full Devon Aligned service. They've not provided that. I mean, when do you, the officers anticipate us in Southampton receiving complete Devon Aligned service?
Right. Series of questions there. I'm going to deal with the first point you made. In my opinion, and that of the executive, and that of the officers, we are well into the tourist season now. The most important thing is the reputation of this council. And therefore, we should be using this council's resource to fulfil what FCC are not doing. I don't want to see overflowing litter bins visited by tourists and overfull bottle banks. So we are putting resource into that because I think the top priority at the moment in the tourist season is the reputation of this council. You are absolutely right on the numbers you gave of the number of people. Something like 40% of households are not having the full Devon Aligned service at the moment. On the figures you mentioned, I'm not going to answer that. I don't know if you want to answer that in part one, but the reality is, yes, you're right in everything you say, Jim. The FCC are not fulfilling large parts of their contract.
Yes, but that's kind of just followed through then on I know you quite rightly say the recommendation there is something for this committee
Yes.
to do, but I would find it difficult to see this committee saying note the improvement just in FCC's performance. There may have been a slight improvement, but we're far off receiving as a council what we contracted for, and I think this is going to be in part two, is are we paying for a substandard service, but that's something that perhaps falls into part two.
I would
But
be...
my key final
Sorry.
key question is, when will South Hams receive a fully Devon-aligned service that we contracted with FCC to provide?
And I will let Mr Molyneux shake his head if I'm getting it wrong. We now have the handicap of the fact that people are isolating at home, so it's put it back even further as a result. And we're not alone. I mean, I heard on the news coming in here that in some places 999 calls at the moment are getting 10 minutes before they're answered, simply because they're so short of staff because people are isolating at home. And I haven't seen it for myself, but I'm told that food supplies are not getting through. It's pretty awful at the moment, and that's not FCC's fault. The answer to your... I am answering.
When can we
It will.
expect what we
I will be
contracted
honest.
for?
I will be honest with you. I will be surprised if it happens in this calendar year.
So, I would absolutely agree with Councillor Baldwin on that point. FCC have given us a plan. However, that plan is considerably short on detail and needs a lot more work for us to do to question and challenge FCC on the delivery of it. If I could just pick up on a couple of points though, Chair. The first point in terms of you saying, in terms of the recommendation, note the improvement. Well, just to remind members, FCC were not collecting over 1,000 recycling collections a day. And we're now basing the reports on customer reports rather than FCC telling us they weren't missing, they were not collecting 1,000 bins a day. So now our customer reports are saying an average of 50, 60 collections a day. So in terms of improvement, that's a big improvement. I know it's not, as I said right at the beginning when I answered Councillor Smurden's question, that they've still got a way to go, but it is still a big improvement on where they were. So that's why that recommendation says note the improvement. It is still a big improvement. There you go. In terms of the plan, and one of your questions in terms of what's in that plan, the key issues, and you will remember from FCC attending council and at the extraordinary meeting of this committee, the key issues are around the recycling transfer station and the location of that recycling transfer station, and the fact it's also used as their depot for their vehicles. So there's an issue where they're going into the recycling to empty the recycling more often, and therefore it creates a backlog and a whole series of issues. So the issues that they're working on are a location to store their vehicles, so it takes them out of the depot, so they're not held up in terms of basically waiting in and out. They're looking at increasing the size of the bays for the recycling, which is an engineering type function. And then they're also looking at the rounds in terms of what is the right mix of vehicles that they actually need to deliver the full service. So they're the key elements of their plan. However, there isn't enough detail for me to say it's going to happen here or it's going to happen there at this point in time. And I would say that in the interest of our residents and our experience in terms of the two implementations that FCC have gone through, that we will need cast iron guarantees that it will be a success. And if they say that they can deliver it before Christmas, I would probably not want to do that anyway, because we need to make sure that we get this right. So it has to fit with when it's right for us as a council, as opposed to when it's right for FCC. So I'd be potentially looking at delaying it, because there's a whole series of things that I want, and additional guarantees that this will work when they do go to full service, before we actually get to that point. So it will, it will depend on what's right for us getting our guarantees that they can deliver what they're proposing before we commit to a date. So there's quite a lot of discussion and negotiation to go on that point.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of my main concerns from looking at the paper that you presented, and you already mentioned it, is the FCC thinks they're getting them all, and they're not. So we've got in our report these graphs which sort of show the numbers of missed collections tailing off and then disappearing on the 5th of July, and then underneath the two graphs, which is residents, which is quite a different story. So, I mean, it concerns me that if they're not registering the fact that they're missing them, then how are they then going to, like, what's being done to make sure that they are actually, that they have the right information and therefore are able to implement.
Can I ask Mrs. Moody to answer this, Chair?
Good afternoon, everybody. So the work that we're undertaking currently with the waste team is around those repeated miscollections. So what we now have the ability to do is have some transparency around data. So we are actively interrogating white space daily, the teams are. As Steve alluded to earlier, we are now doing quality checks with locality teams. So when they're saying they've collected it, we're going out and doing random spot checks to make sure they are. But equally, there's a whole heap of work in case management around the worksheets. So when our customer reports a miscollection, generates a worksheet. What we're doing now is comparing that daily and weekly to make sure that all of those customers that SC aren't getting to, we know who they are, so they will get to them. So it's just that transparency of data at the minute, and it's quite a big piece of work to do it manually. There's no automated way. And actually, if there was, I think we want some assurances that we're capturing all that data. So yeah, that's the work that we're currently undertaking to make sure that all those residents that are reporting it to us are actually going to get a collection if FCC don't know that they're not collecting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, are there steps that you're taking that, because I would imagine after weeks and weeks and weeks of reporting misdeliveries and nothing happening,
Yep.
there are probably many residents who have given up on reporting them.
Yep.
So are there any steps that you're taking to encourage residents to continue reporting their miscollections so that you are getting that information?
Yeah, so the other piece of work that the case management team have been doing, and we've seen that the numbers come down considerably, is around the waste escalation email inbox. Any general waste inquiries that have gone back a few months, we're now contacting them customers by phone usually and saying, we apologise, are you still having the same issues? So that we're making sure that from historic data, we've not just put it at a point in time from now and saying it's okay, we're going back to them customers and saying, are you still having the same issue? So yes, that's a big piece of work that's happened. I mean, the case management team alone have completed about 9,000 pieces of work, such a small team, and they continue to do that.
Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm listening quite intently with what we're saying from the officers and councillors' perspectives, and I don't doubt all of it's happening. I'm also on the other ear, listening to what my residents are telling me, and I know in my ward that I'm guessing I've got one of the worst areas, but maybe not. But it certainly seems that way. But what residents are saying is, you've been telling me you're doing this, you've been telling me you're doing that, we don't doubt that you're doing it, but it doesn't actually answer our question. Our question is, when are you going to get the bins collected, and when is it going to be right? So, I do understand what we're saying as a council, and I know we're taking steps. I don't have the same faith in FCC, as people know. We shared an email about their reaction to residents. But the residents, our residents, my residents as well, want to know, when is it going to be sorted out? When are we not going to be given excuses, however valid they are? When are we not going to be given excuses? When are we going to be told, from today, it's not you? That's what I think they want to know. And I think that's what we're losing sight of.
Councillor Baldry.
I know that the problems are particularly bad in Councillor Fred Spencer's ward. In terms of not having confidence in FCC, my priority at the moment is to try and get the service up and running. And as Councillor Spencer has quite rightly said, we have made promises to people and they don't believe us anymore. But that is why, as Mrs. Moody said, we have the team out there double checking. The problem is not with the in-cab technology, it is with the people who are putting the information into the in-cab technology sitting in the cabs. And they don't always tell the truth. And that is why I am disappointed with FCC because I think it is the role of their supervisors to check on the ground that the right information is being put into the system. But that is why we are now following up, as been explained in detail, using the information supplied by customers and going out and saying, when you said, Mr. Driver, that the bins were not out, we can now demonstrate to you that that is not true, because the customer has told us they had put them out and our staff on the ground went to check it. It is a long, one of the great regrets I've got is the fact that the reputation of this council, people are very disappointed with SHDC. Our customers say, you have made promises, it is our job, SHDC, to collect the bins, and as you just said, Barry, they don't believe us anymore. The only way we can put it right is going out there and getting the service to improve, and if that means it costs money for this council in the terms of our staff doing that job, that's what it will be.
Yeah. Just picking up on what Councillor Spencer said, you're quite right, they are excuses. I'm more confident now than I've ever been that we can resolve these issues, and we are seeing them being resolved individually. Up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, when we were still at the several, hundreds and hundreds a day of missed collections, the team were completely overwhelmed, and everybody was overwhelmed by where do we go, where do we turn next, in terms of the focus was get FCC to collect the vast majority of the bins, which they're now doing. The team are now in a position where I know Mrs. Moody was out visiting Suset's premises in Totnes today. On my way in, I visited a customer in Dartford to see that problem. So we're now getting to the real core problems of those residents that have been continually promised that you'll get a collection and then don't get a collection the following week. So we're now cracking through those and ticking those off. It will take a few weeks, but we are now starting to see that. What we're focusing on is FCC maintaining the core service, and we will then resolve those individual issues the way Mrs. Moody described. So we are making progress, and I'm more confident now than I've ever been that we will get through those customer issues.
But I'm underlining what others have said. Isn't it appalling that a senior manager like Mrs. Moody and our deputy chief executive are the people that are having to go out and call on customers and speak to them, and in a normal, proper world, both of them would have better things to do with their time. But that is the amount of resource we are putting into, and at that level.
Councillor Spencer.
Sorry, I've just lost my brain.
Well, so can I come back?
Can I come back?
I've got Councillor Cullen, then I come to Councillor Austin. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was really sympathising with Councillor Barry. Residents in my ward still complaining about missed collections. I still see it, and anecdotally, people have told me they've just given up. The figures we have about complaints, that they don't bother anymore because they couldn't get through. So I'm not sure that they're entirely reliable, the reports of who's complaining and who isn't, because people have given up and they can't get through, and they're just accepting a terrible level of service, which doesn't really help the reputation of this council, unfortunately. I mean, we're propping up FCC, frankly, aren't we? That's what we've been saying. And how long are we going to do that for? We don't really seem to know. And then what happens when we don't prop them up anymore? We don't seem to know. We were told a target date of 12th of July was when performance should be back at acceptable levels. Well, that's been and gone. It's not acceptable levels. We're being recommended to note improvement, which I can't see that that's far too positive. I mean, my recommendation, if it was, I would be suggesting it was far more expressing concern, frankly. We're being told that up to 500 residents missed collections still, 5 times the normal rate of calls on missed collections when people can actually get through, that is. I mean, I understand about COVID and shortfall of drivers, but that really masks the, I think the incompetence of what's been going on over all these months. And I don't really have, like Barry, I don't really have any faith that this is actually going to improve to any significant degree, I'm afraid. I mean, it's all been said before, but we keep saying it's improvement, and then it's undercut by the further comments in the report, which really don't suggest at all that there is an underlying improvement, in my view.
Your question?
Well, where will it all end?
Well,
My-
can I just quickly, when you say how long will we prop up FCC, we will continue to prop them up until the service is back where it ought to be. And
Okay,
because that is
definitely.
in the interest of our customers. That is the answer to
Is it
that.
in the interests of our customers?
I've got several people on this.
So, I will not be averse to, these recommendations were just for the sake of having something on paper. I will not be averse to a recommendation along the lines that you are disappointed that FCC are not fulfilling their contractual
Councillor
obligations.
Mulgrew, I think we will probably come up with some recommendation. I don't think we need any assistance from the executives. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendations that are before us are committee notes improvements and FCC's performance. I think there's no question that it has improved. I remember driving around Iron Bridge, you know, when it was at its worst, and you could see the things outside that and picked up. They definitely have been picked up now. There's no question about the fact that the system is working much better than it has done. The sheer volume of contact I'm getting from residents drops significantly over a number of weeks. And, you know, I thought we made really good progress, and I think we were to congratulate him for the effort to put in, and there wasn't any question that it had got a lot better. The executive is looking at meeting with FCC senior management on a weekly basis. I'm fully supportive of that. I don't think they can do a whole lot more than that, so I would be quite happy to support both of those recommendations. Now, we're aware that, you know, there are recent problems that come up, you know, over the last few days almost. You can't really debate data when you haven't got any data on it. We don't know what that problem is going to be. We've been told about a few problems over the start in the last few days, but we don't know where that's going to happen. We don't know how long it's going to go on. We can see again a change in government policy that would happen within days that would affect the whole thing again. So there's very little point in us debating that. If I have a question, is that we were at a point where we were starting to implement financial penalties, as far as my understanding was, on FCC. And at that point, you know, the collection service got an awful lot better very quickly. So presumably we're at that point still. Is that still in place in the sense that if we now see the situation get worse, would that incur significant financial penalties for FCC?
The answer to the question is yes. If you want more detail, when we go into part 2, I can give you more detail.
Thank you.
Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, thanks to Councillor Bowler-Green, Mr. Monaghan and Mr. Moody for the work you're doing. It's obviously a very difficult situation. Mr. Monaghan, you've been out in my wards visiting residents and some flowers that were at that time, so appreciate it. My question is, at the moment, there's a lot of additional resource coming from SAPAMS and also from FCC. When that is withdrawn, is the long-term prospect of this service actually achievable and sustainable? Because the current situation is not going to be out of that forever. And I know the priority is to get it sorted now, but long-term, are we actually in a contract that we can achieve and FCC can achieve?
Councillor Baldwin.
The first part of the answer is yes, I am determined that we will bring in the full Devon Line service, and it may take a while, but at the moment our contractor is FCC, so it will have to be done by FCC.
Not in part one. Okay, not in part one. Okay, Councillor Sweet.
Hi, thank you. We're in the loop still, aren't we? We're definitely still stuck in the loop. I mean, it's great that there is some improvement. I know in Totnes, I don't have emails coming in. I don't know about that other councillors. You did?
Yeah, a lot.
Oh, I've had one thing in the last couple of weeks. But I mean, it's obviously like, you know, much denser, isn't it, in certain areas, rural areas. So, I mean, we're not going to, with anything COVID related, it was always going to be towards the end of this year that we would really start to move into a recovery, because we're just seeing all the kind of, knock-on implications of the pandemic. A couple of just quick questions, focus questions, I think, really. How Southampton or FCC, or are you planning to make the sort of application to the government to be exempt from the pinging self-isolation app? Because that sort of thing quite, it's been in the public eye the last couple of days, isn't it, that corporations are able to apply to be exempt from that. So, obviously then it falls into if somebody's got COVID and somebody's been in the cab with them, then they can make that decision. But it does seem a bit mad that, as you're saying, 10 people are isolating because one person's ill when they may or may not have even sort of been on the same round. So are we able to make that application?
I don't think it would be for us, it would be for FCC as a contractor. But I think I would probably agree with what Councillor Austin said, which is government policies, I suspect, changing quite rapidly on this. I don't think it will change quite quickly anyway. I mean, of those 10, I think a couple of them were actually genuine COVID cases, and that they got from their family. So it wasn't necessarily that just because they were all grouped together, that they were, it's sporadic across the teams.
Because I was wondering whether, we've got 10 people who actually are FCC staff, but how many are self-isolating who are perhaps agency staff who have been pinged as a result of maybe working for FCC? So, I know.
We haven't considered it, and I haven't asked the question whether FCC have considered applying for it.
So maybe if the government regulations don't change within sort of the next week or so, that could be something that we looked at. Just the other thing briefly, I had an email from Devon Contract Web, whom I am a customer for my business, and it prompted my memory that at our extraordinary meeting, I asked that we, as members, could receive the sort of bulletins and advertisements for FCCs looking for jobs, their job recruitment status, and they assured that they were going to send that out the next day, and I think this last Steve said that was going to be shared. So Devon Contract Way sent all their customers an email saying, we understand there's a shortfall in drivers, blah, 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 this is what we're doing to recruit, this is how much we're paying, this is what, and it just jolted my memory that I asked that FCC to do that. And considering sort of every member of every resident in Southampton is a customer of FCC, I mean, if they shared that, their recruitment drive with the residents, then actually maybe they would have a bit more luck recruiting staff.
I know I've seen on Facebook recruitment for FCC, it wouldn't say FCC, but it talks about drivers and loaders in Kingsbridge and so on. So, but I would take that away and see what the problem is and why.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they said they used Facebook. didn't
Can
they?
we, right, Councillor Spencer.
Sorry, I apologise for the wrong language thing, I think. I wrote it down this time. All I have to do now is to learn to read. It's a bit late, but just picking up on what Steve was saying about FCC are going through and finding these things, whether they're told by residents or by us as councillors, and then we're ticking the box and moving on. And I think that's actually misrepresenting the situation, because what I've been complaining about constantly is missing a collection, ticking the box and getting it collected, and then missing it fully again. And you would think, perhaps, that if they had ticked the box and done this properly, they wouldn't miss it a second or third and fourth and subsequent times. So something clearly is wrong with what is working in the system, because it is working. I have words here, but FCC's performance has improved dramatically. There was a time where I was spending most of my days, 5 days a week, passing on queries to voice escalation as people testify, because I sent a copy of every single one. And now, in the last week, I received one. So there is an improvement in performance, but it's one individual element of that performance. It's waste collection, fly tipping, which is part of their responsibility, as I understand it. I phoned up and chased the fly tipping report that was put in January 2009. So if that is representative of fly tipping, then they are something like 6 months behind. It might not be representative. I won't give you an example if I can give it. And so it seems to me that if we're being asked to say we won't be improving the FCC's performance, well, in one element maybe, but not across the board.
Do you want to comment at all? If I may, in terms of, you misunderstood me, Councillor Spencer. We are making sure that they tick the box and Don collects it. We're also putting that on a watch list. So we keep that on a weekly basis, challenging FCC, have you collected it, have you collected it? So we aren't just, because we know exactly the problem. They say, yeah, we go out, we say, yeah, we put everything in place. They go and collect it that week, we think, oh great, it's done. And then the week later they go and miss it again. So we've got a process in place where we're tracking those ones that keep reoccurring to make sure that they are done 5-6 weeks after is where we anticipate going with that. So we are picking up on that issue.
Sorry, but so what you're saying, Mr. Manager, is effectively that we are updating white space. Is that right? We're doing their job updating white space.
So we ensure that white space is being updated, and we can monitor that. So we were able to interrogate white space data now. So if we've asked for a specific route to around, or a specific piece of information in terms of the collection point, or it's an assisted collection, that's been added. So we are monitoring that being done by FCC.
Right. So I'm reassured. On one level, I'm reassured to hear that you're actually doing it. But on the other, I'm totally impressed.
Okay. Can I suggest that we move on to the part 2 section, and if there are any further questions, they can be dealt with in that. Can I explain why I'm going to propose that we move into part 2? As you're all aware, I did send a set of questions, 10 questions, to both Councillor Baldry and to Mr. Molyneux earlier this week, and I was advised that 6 of those questions should only be dealt with in part 2. So that being the case, and bearing in mind the 4.3 on the report that was sent to you, which is, and I quote, FCC have provided an outline plan to move the whole district changeover to curbside recycling, i.e. to the Devon and Lyons service. Officers are still in discussions with FCC to understand the detail and timescales for the implementation of this. So clearly there are discussions going on, and no doubt in some parts they're delicate. So that being the case, I think it would be, I'd like to accept the advice that has been given to me and put to you a proposal that we do move into private session, and so the proposal is that in accordance with section 100 brackets A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business in order to avoid the likely disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act. I'd like to move that from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
I second that. Right, I'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Okay. So right, so can we now exclude public and press? Okay. Right.